Hi again, everybody. Howie Marlin here, and welcome to another edition of Addiction Got a Minute. It is November 29th, 2018. I've been corrected. Thank you very much. And I'm joined today, of course, with my most esteemed partner in crime, Michael
morning.
Blanchard. Good morning, Mike.
Doing good?
Nice you
Yourself?
can make it.
Yeah, I did.
Just happened to mosey
I got a
on.
little late, but I'm here, all right?
But the smoke hasn't cleared yet. The dust hasn't cleared yet.
The
He's
police
here.
officer's outside waiting for me to come back out, so.
Waiting for you when you leave.
Yeah.
We're blessed to have a wonderful guest today, Christine Todd. Good morning, Christine.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Christine has been involved with so many things on this island for so long. Certainly pretty well known for both being an activist and being outspoken on behalf of things like various commissions and involvement on the island. Mm-hmm. Before we go any further, I just want to say happy holidays to everybody, and our hearts and wishes go out to those who have been suffering in the fires in California, the most recent of the catastrophes that have been happening around the country. There are folks that I know that are intimately involved in that, and so our prayers are with you all. Our show's charter is to expose everybody to as many of the assets available to them regarding dealing with issues surrounding substance use disorders in their various forms, whether it be drugs or alcohol or internet or sex addiction and all the other things which can ruin people's lives. Michael and I have had the opportunity to do a couple of shows so far, and thank you all very much for your comments. It's really good of you to comment on Facebook or to let us know directly. The emails to me, although I appreciate it, I'd really like for you to share them on Facebook, which would be really good. The social media really does help. So thank you all very much. Please do make your suggestions. Continue with the suggestions. If you can see, we've been doing our best to follow on them, and we will continue to do so. I've had an interesting week, but before I get into my week, Michael, you've got some changes going on there, buddy.
Yeah, today is my last day of employment at Island Healthcare. I have been a substance use access coordinator, where if people come in through primary care.
I forgot the confetti. We should have the confetti.
Yeah, no, I decided to try to be on my own, not to construe that as being not involved in the community with substance use and mental health issues and so on and so forth. I'm going to focus on photography, my gallery, and I have a book that's coming out that I hope will have some inspiration in it to help people with addictions and recovery. So I'm old, I'm 61 years old. I was supposed to retire when I came here, and I love Island Healthcare and the work they do. They've actually got someone who's going to be replacing me. They may end up having somewhat of a recovery coaching function, because we know that primary care is one of the best places to get to people. You come in.
There is no replacing you.
Oh, I know, but I think it'll be good, because we've had some good success at when you come in with your primary care physician. You have a chance for a chat, and if there's any substance use issues, it gives you an opportunity to get to that person where you may not get another chance. And so I'm going to miss that, but I still plan to be very active in the community, working on efforts like this and so on. So thank you for.
I know you do plan to continue to be active in the community for sure. And you know, it's interesting, the whole Recovery Coach program, which I was part of at the inception. There's a great poster at Community Services of the Gilligan's Island. Have you seen it? The Gilligan's Island characters?
That's my favorite show.
And each of us, our faces are imposed on the picture of one of the cast photos of Gilligan's Island, and I'm
You're the skipper.
No, I'm not the skipper.
You're not Gilligan.
I'm the professor, I believe.
You're the professor, okay.
Am I? I don't know. I have to take another look at it. I don't know. We'll probably put it up on one of the upcoming shows. But the recovery coaching program is critical. I jumped on board, and I went ahead and I got certified as a recovery coach for the ER. I had been working through our hospital for so long, as many of you know, and wanted to thread the connection between people coming in with an emergent situation and then having a resource, a restorative resource connected with them at the very beginning. So I think this is what's happening. We're finally getting that together so that when somebody comes in duress, in crisis, at that stage with family, They're all connected with an individual who helped them to, and what a recovery coach does, hold their hand through the process of following through on seeing doctors, the appointments, taking the right medications, and only that, getting the exercise, getting to work, going to meetings, whatever the restorative processes are for them, the recovery coach is there to help them. And for more information on that here on Martha's Vineyard, please reach out to Community Services, the recovery coaching program there.
And I'll add one point. There was a woman who confided in me, a beautiful person who is now doing very well, that when she thought about coming home from rehab after a 45-day rehab, on the plane she was thinking about coming back to what she had there as her support system in the absence of somebody like that, and she had a drink on the plane home. And so, you know, I think we forget about that support system when the person comes back, and our island isn't strong in overall in terms of lots of resources, and I think Christine is going to, you know, talk about that, if not today, at a future date. But it just points to the fact that if Island Healthcare and other organizations are recognizing the fact that you need somebody outside that office or that room that can be in the home or be out with that person to make sure that that stability stays there.
I'm really glad you brought that up. There is such a thing as recovery companions, and if anyone is interested, please contact me directly. I work with interventionists around the country and with transport recovery companions who literally do just that. They will fly out to the facility, meet the client, the person, the loved one, as they brush themselves off and start their new healthy life, and they will be there to escort them, to be their friend, and to help redirect their attention so that they return safe and sound. So we'll get to that maybe at another time, but this leads us to our guest this morning. Thank you so much, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but Christine, you've been involved with many things, and we're here to talk about basically learn to cope.
Mm-hmm. So let me tell you about it.
Jump in, baby.
So I have suffered with the disease of addiction in my family, and many years ago tried to find help on the island and found myself feeling frustrated in that there were plenty of support groups out here, 12-step based, and although they helped me to feel that I wasn't alone in my struggle, I had a desire, a need to have access to more information, to be more aware of what kind of tools were out in the world that could help me and help the people that I loved who were suffering with addiction. And I've heard about an organization called Learn to Cope, which is based out of Taunton, Massachusetts. And I went to one of their meetings, and I found out that there was a place where I could go and I could get support, education, be tapped into resources, and leave with some kind of hope. And that's really the goal of Learn to Cope, is to provide those four things. So I went to meetings off island. I asked the corporate office if I could bring a chapter out here, and they said, well, you've got to go to meetings. You've got to make it happen. So I went to meetings in New Bedford and in Plymouth, and it meant staying overnight because I couldn't catch the last boat back that time of year. And essentially, I got three other moms to come with me to go get trained to be facilitators to start our own chapter here, which we did a little over a year ago. And we meet every week, Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. at the hospital. When you walk in the front door, take a left, and it's the conference room down on your right. And we meet for an hour and a half. And it's an opportunity for people who are in crisis to come and share their painful story, ask questions of each other. You know, when you start to, I think, admit to yourself that you may have someone in your life struggling with addiction, it's a very frightening process in the beginning and throughout, but I think that we very naturally try to deny the symptoms that we see. And I know in my case, I felt at times that I was actually losing my mind. And I think if I had other individuals that I could speak with and share my concerns with, I would have realized a lot sooner that what I was seeing was actually indicative of someone struggling with addiction.
Let's talk about the resistance. You said for you that there were obstacles. What are the obstacles that people face?
Well, I think first you don't want to admit initially that you have it in your family, because once you do, I think the natural reaction is one of how have I failed as a parent? How have I failed as a sibling? You immediately you want to blame yourself for the difficulty that you see a loved one going through. What could I have done different? And so it's not something that you are going to pick up the phone and call your mother about, or your friend about, or a sibling, you know, so you tend to internalize a lot of your fears, and it becomes increasingly isolating as you begin to live the nightmare of having someone in your life who's suffering with addiction.
And one thing, and I'm sure Michael's all too familiar with this, what happens, folks, is a term called normalization. You suffer through a crisis, a trauma, and it's consistent over time and becomes normal. That's the term normalization. And it becomes your life, and you live it without any, it becomes a non-issue. If it were, you go about life living with such horrific stress and guilt and trauma, yet you go about your life with a smile. You go to work, and how are you? I'm fine. And
Yeah.
you don't, but it's become normal.
To that point, I'll never forget being in the emergency room, and Hazel Teagan sat with me for a good length of time. She was an angel. And I shared with her my story, what my life was like, what I had experienced. And after just spilling my guts to her, I looked at her and I said, but everybody has this kind of stuff going on in their life. This is normal.
Yeah.
I mean, how is my life any different from anyone else's?
Right?
Talk about normalizing it.
Boom.
I
Thank
totally had normalized it. And she looked at me and she said, no, Christine, this is not normal. This is not normal. There is a big problem here, and we're going to help you get through it. So
I think that's, and the other thing about, well, I guess about Learn to Cope is I've sat in on some of the meetings, and I want to give you some credit. You have really worked your tail off to get this here. I mean, spending, you know, nights, overnights, and whatever. What I find about Learn to Cope in helping parents with that is that there's a seeking to understand, there's an education component to it, that I'm not saying that Al-Anon and some of the others don't do that as well, but I remember in terms of normalization and whatever, when I did like a little tour of the North Shore, so I went to Salem and Ipswich, and I was the guest speaker, and they wanted to peer inside the head of an alcoholic addict who had been in that place, so that they were seeking to understand the behavior they were seeing with their child or whatever. And I remember looking at them and saying to them, you people were nothing but noise to me. My family was nothing but noise. Yeah. You have to understand, you were just in my way. You were in the way of the disease. I didn't have a feeling for you. I didn't care what you were going through. I didn't even consider what you were going through. It's not that I stopped loving my family, but I had an ultimate goal was to seek the drug or the alcohol, and you were noise. So when your loved one, acts in this way towards you, because the parents have such a horror about the behavior of their child or their loved one, that I said, I don't know how you not take it personally, but it wasn't personal with me. You were just in my way,
right?
Yeah. And I think Learn to Cope brings in guest speakers, which is really a cool thing, because if the parent or the person there stays long enough, they're going to get a broad perspective.
Absolutely.
And so it's not just a one night event,
right.
And I think that's why we'd like to build more of a following here on the island.
Well, that's what makes it different from the 12-step groups, is that you actually crosstalk, you share information, you help each other. People come into that room with at different points, at different stages of dealing with addiction in their lives. And so if somebody's in a very early stage and thinking that they're going crazy like I did when I was in it early, they can talk with somebody who can look at them and say, no, you're not going crazy. You're seeing it for what it is. And then share experiences that they've had where they've done things that may have enabled somebody who's suffering with addiction as opposed to not enabling. So how can we help each other not feel alone, not feel that we have to start from scratch with this whole thing and stumble through it ourselves? There are resources available. Learn to Cope has a website. It's learn2cope.org. They have a forum on there where you can anonymously participate in a conversation with other people online who are going through similar things to what you're going through. People who have dealings with law enforcement over the issues of addiction can share what their experience has been and how can you get help. People who think that they need to section their child, and we can do a whole show on that because that's complicated, but you can go onto the website and you can find information that helps you make the right decision for you at that time and for your loved one.
And there's that debate, because I know that even here on the island, tough love versus not tough love.
Yeah.
You know, I've had husbands and wives in the place of divorce because over their child about tough love or not, continue to give money and enable and versus cut them off and hope for the best. And so they'll ask me, many people will say, well, because you're an alcoholic, you're probably going to side on, being gentle. And I'll say, no, but that's my opinion. And so, every situation is unique. And by being at a Learn to Cope meeting, you're not just asking me or one person. You've got a variety of experiences, and then you can take it all in and make your own decision based on that blend of experiences. So I think it's a really cool program.
It's very difficult to, especially where we live here. In many ways, our island is just like any other place. We have addiction just like any other community. But we're unique in the sense that we are encapsulated. We are cut off from the rest of the world.
Christine, we have a hell of a moat.
We have a moat. And so I have heard from people in other Learn to Cope chapters off island that they have individuals coming for support and help who could go to the meeting in their town, but they don't want anyone in their town to really know what's happening with them, so they will drive 40 minutes,
to go to
an hour, maybe more, to go to a Learn to Cope meeting in another county.
Yeah.
So we don't have that luxury here. But I guess, I just want people to know that they're not alone. There are many, many people suffering here, and it's important that we support each other. It's important that we learn what resources are here, what resources are available not here. How can we help each other? And keep that conversation going. If we pull the blanket over it time and again, we're never going to get anywhere. We need to really take a hard look at this. I'm so appreciative of the fact that you're doing this program and heightening awareness to something that we all know exists here. But let's talk about how can we make it better? How can we help each other?
On that note, I'm just going to say that when I first started doing this, I had this dream of creating a program called Let's Talk. The whole idea to lower the fence, because your neighbors, they're having trouble too. You're having trouble, but we internalize it, and then we start feeling guilty, and we think, oh, I don't want anybody to know my pain because I'm going to feel bad or look bad or what have you, when the same thoughts are being held with your neighbor. Of course, not everybody, but with many. But I hope that will bring us to the topic of yet another episode in the future. I want to thank Christine so much for coming to visit us today, and I think that we'll continue this conversation. And speaking of continuing, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with Addiction Got a Minute in just a minute. Welcome back, and I'm here with my co-host Michael Blanchard, and we were just talking about how much we love Christine.
I love Christine.
And she's a tremendous asset, a phenomenal resource to the island. And so thank you all very much for watching us today. Yeah, I think I want to call this segment, What's Up with Michael? So what's up with Michael? What's going on?
Well, quite a bit's actually happening, but you know, you and I have been talking a little bit as far as trying to, what would be valuable for future shows here. And one thing came up this week, and I know that we're thinking of inviting Bobby Lima, who's a licensed addiction counselor here on the island. And we've actually become friends, and I'll fully admit that she's my therapist, because you should have a therapist, all right? Everybody should have a therapist if you're like got the brain that I do. But she gave me an article yesterday about alcohol, and I know that we focus on the opioid crisis here, certainly, and everywhere. But when I finished my master's thesis, I looked at drinking in kids 8 to 10 years old. And the article Bobby gave me looks at drinking in women. And what I'm worried is happening is that there's such a focus on that piece that the underlying slow death of alcohol is not staying in focus enough. And the work that I did on my thesis proposed that if you could stop an 8, 9, or 10-year-old from drinking until they were 14, 15, 16, that the outcome would be better. You might say, well, that's kind of not so great. We don't want them drinking at 14, 15, or 16. But the question is what do you shoot for? Like on this island, what would we shoot for to try to make a difference? And to say you're going to cure alcoholism is not a realistic goal, but if you could say, look, let's take a group of kids that we could work with that we might be able to manage to make an impact. So maybe 8, 9, 10-year-olds or a group you could work with about delaying alcohol. Bobby's article was in USA Today this week, and it was about 85% increase in deaths and alcoholism with women especially. And it's not an overdose where you're found, unconscious. It's usually a long-term liver failure, pancreatitis, organ failure. Certainly not as dramatic, but I think for our show here, alcohol is so well accepted, and many people don't want to look at it because it is so well accepted, that we want to make sure we keep our eye on that problem as we go forward.
What do you mean so well accepted?
Well, as somebody who's a recovering alcoholic, you can't move without bumping into a can of beer or we don't have billboards here, but I mean, last night I was watching the football game between the New Orleans Saints and Dallas. And there was a stretch where there were three alcohol commercials in a row, beautiful people sipping wine. The next one was, it has to do with tequila and how people are running through the streets with bottles in their hands, and this is what life's all about. And so when you have that, most people don't notice that, but the recovering alcoholic does, and you let it pass. But it also plants in your mind that life is intimately related to alcohol. If you're going to free yourself from the daily burden of life and enjoy yourself, if you can have one moment of enjoyment per day, you got to be buzzed to do it, and I know I'm being cynical and sarcastic.
No,
but
you're not. And I'm going to say straight out, you touched on a couple of things. The first thing is, for those of you that are watching, think back to when you had your first drink. Think back to your neighborhood. I was 12. I was introduced to drugs so early it was ridiculous. I was doing acid by the time I was 13, and people around me were doing everything. So when you say that, is that too young to think about it? I go, it's not young enough.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 9.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 8. I'm thinking educate early. Don't be ashamed to talk about it. Bring it straight out, because those kids know kids who are doing it. You may not have a lot of kids who are actively doing a lot of drugs at 9, but there are plenty that are. And when you start finding out just how many there are, you get shocked. Well, we shouldn't be shocked. We shouldn't be shocked, because I expect that we will have probably an entire program on this when I bring somebody from Big Pharma, alcohol, tobacco on the show and ask them directly, what the hell are you doing to us? Why is it that we get inundated with alcohol commercials to the point of, we talked about normalization earlier, where you're supposed, is this defining our lives? Are you trying to define how we're supposed to be? Are we supposed to have skinny vodka? Are we supposed to have, light beer, and I'm going to put somebody in jail because they like a flavored beer? Kind of humor to encourage everybody to understand that alcohol is how your life is supposed to be. You are supposed to have these drinks. Yet on the same commercial, those commercials are run during the local edition of Cops, where they're stopping people, and the first question is, have you had anything to drink, sir?
Yeah, and I'll tell you one story that really touched me, is that I was watching TV one night, and it was one of those cooking shows where you had the chef. I forget the guy's name. The chef's
Graham Carey, the Galpin Gourmet.
No, this guy's this big,
Julia Childs.
It's like a weightlifter.
Oh, yeah,
GQ.
More recent guy.
Yeah, that's a cook.
Yeah.
I mean, what else would a woman want, right? And he makes the whole dinner, and there's just all this beautiful couple sitting at the table, and they got the wine glasses all out and whatever, and he serves the dinner, and they pour the champagne or the wine, and he takes a bottle of water and he pours it in his glass. I watched it, and I actually got tears in my eyes, because I had just gone through my divorce, and I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to ever find anybody again in my life because I couldn't drink alcohol anymore. And I saw this guy who, and he drank water. And I was so touched by that I actually wrote the station and said, you don't know what that, I mean, it's like I get emotional. You don't know what that meant to me, to have him do that. So that just tells you how ingrained it is that he's like my hero. And I didn't like him until he poured the water. So, I mean, I'm telling you that I think, alcohol, it's just so sneaky that we don't realize that. Let's not lose our eye on it in this show. Most grants and most funding these days are focused on the opioid issues, and God, please don't take this like that. That's not important. But I want to make sure we're still not losing track of motherhood and apple pie, which is a Bud Light, So anyway, that's off my soapbox for now.
That's it. Yeah. One of the reasons why I asked you if you were interested in doing something like this with me, is because of the position that you've taken, your observations. Not only am I very pleased that you did take the time to share that, this is the reason why I hope that people appreciate the fact that I'm joining Michael in sharing our thoughts. We get carried away in trying to fit into society. We get carried away in trying to be good neighbors, good friends, good relatives, and these expectations, the social expectations, particularly around holidays and celebrations and alcohol. Alcohol is one of the bigger mysteries of life, how it can go from a benign, fun little thing, which makes you a social lubricant and makes it more, you tend to, the humor comes out and things like that, but then it turns into a piranha overnight, a nice little koi fish. The next time you stick your finger in, you get your finger bit off by it. How does it happen? And the chemical engineering of it all. The devastation that it causes is not to be overlooked. And as we talk about the different issues, whether it be drug-related, internet, or whatever, I'm glad that you bring us back to the severity of the condition which we called alcohol dependence or alcoholism. Absolutely. It's too easy for us to get carried away with one thing or another, but the reality is, particularly during these holiday times, and I just want to take a minute to wish you all a very happy holiday, all of them. And during this period of time, this is one of those times where it pays to be hypervigilant. It's okay for you to take a little action to make that recommendation, but a little bit more than a recommendation. Michael's talking about the chef who poured himself a glass of water. Well, just think, how can you affect a positive change with your family and friends during this holiday period when you're at a social event? You know, having bottled water out and around, making it easy for people to grab the water instead of something like that.
You know, I once did a post on Facebook with a picture. I forget what it was, but it was on little kindnesses that make a difference, that you don't even know what they mean to somebody that's in recovery. And I wrote a list of things like, I was getting in my car and I was embarrassed about having a breathalyzer to blow in, and it was the first time my daughter and her friends were in the car with me. And I'm feeling like an embarrassment in front of her friends that I have to blow into a breathalyzer. And as I picked up the breathalyzer and I looked back at them, the 3 friends looked at me and said, "It's okay." They said, "It's okay." I remember when I got my license back, the hearings officer at the DMV had a smile on her face and she gave me a high five, validating that I was even okay with the DMV from all the hard work I did. I remember my boss, when they were pouring champagne at the company dinner, he had arranged for the waiter to have a bottle of water to pour water seamlessly in my glass so that I wouldn't feel awkward as somebody passed by. And you may not think there's for me it was like an amazing kindness, and you felt like there was support. And so I think, you know, in the holidays, that it's really easy for a family. You don't have to cure world hunger. You can do a little kindness that you don't know how much that means to somebody that might be in that circumstance. So
very well put. Little little kindnesses. That's really a great note to end on. Michael and I are just trying to be ourselves and trying to help. We're not really sure how this is going to work. We throw ideas back and forth about who might be on the show, who could be on the show. For those of you that do listen to this, thank you very much. If there's anybody that you can think of that you do believe whose voice would be appreciated, be it, you don't have to agree with them, but someone who would inspire conversation. People who are, you know, involved, you better believe I would love to have them sit next to us and join us in this little crusade. You know, think globally, act locally. That's not a bad philosophy. And this island of ours, we have that moat I joke about. And that moat is real. We don't have the resources to go to the meeting over there. I mean, I'm with the Coast Guard, and we had to start our own flotilla here because going to even a flotilla meeting in Falmouth was...
You had to float. But I saw on Facebook today that, last night on Facebook, they're building a bridge between Martha's Vineyard and Woods Hole.
Oh, thank God.
I actually saw it constructed. It curves to this side and it goes over, so the steamship ferry is going to be out, and then we'll have complete services.
As long as it's good looking.
It's going to look very pretty next to
that's
all
wonderful.
of the wind things that are going to be generating electricity.
I used to have a pass for the tunnel. It went along with the show. Well, very good. Good enough for now.
It was a good show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming every time. On behalf of Michael Blanchard, Michael, how can people reach you?
You can reach me at mblanch, MBLANCH 601 at mac.com. And my cell phone, I've had it for 30 years, the whole world has it. So 617-448-3934. I'm always available to try to help people. And on Facebook, facebook.com/Blanchard Photo. I'm out there, so happy to help.
And I'm available at decisionscounselingservices.com. One word. You can get the information through there. On behalf of Michael Blanchard and Christine Todd today, I'm Howie Marlin. Till next time. If we all drip one drop of sanity back into the bucket of our society, we just might end up filling the pool enough to give the next generation a little safer world. I've got a saying that describes my efforts. The best I can do is the best I can do, and I will. This brings us to the end of another edition of Addiction. Got a minute? I wish you warm breezes and clear sailing.